what you've seen from this team? I know it's really early, obviously, and more non-conference, but, figure why not, man? Talk a little LSU baseball. So
let's do it. Let's do it.
Awesome. We'll get it rolling. All right, 3, 2, 1. The LSU baseball season is off and rolling, helping us talk all things and break down all things by you Bengals on the diamond. LSU legend and host of Mik'd Up with Mikie Mahtook, the man himself. Mikey, what's going on, man? Appreciate you taking the time. Pleasure to have you on.
No, look, I dressed up just for you, man. Just for you.
I see that, man. I see that. You're looking fresh. You're looking really good.
Try to.
looking big league over there. So, Mikey, I want to start with this. Obviously, again, we're very start of the season, non-conference play a few weeks in. Funny enough, I was actually able to catch the makeup game on Monday night that LSU played against Nichols. But we're going through non-conference play. When you look at this team, what were your preseason thoughts, expectations, the building of the roster? Obviously, we know you could argue nobody utilizes NIL in the portal more efficiently or better than Jay Johnson and LSU. Your thoughts on what LSU did over the offseason, some of the pieces they added. Obviously, we can talk about them here shortly and what they're doing on the field right now, but some big-time pieces that Jay was able to add to the roster and early on paying big dividends.
Yeah, obviously the new age college sports, baseball specifically, there's always going to be a lot of turnover. I mean, there's a ton of baseball teams around the country. Everybody wants to play in the SEC. The reality of it is that not everybody can because there's not enough roster spots. And when you go to a big school like LSU, sometimes you don't get the opportunities to play, or maybe you're not playing well and you don't put the great first impression, and you transfer out, or you have guys that get drafted. And so last year, LSU had a bunch of turnover. I think they only had 12 or 13 guys returning from that team the previous year. So Jay had to go out there and get a lot of guys, impact freshmen in the recruiting class, which he did. Right, he brought in the one of the top recruiting classes in the country. Then he had to go out in the portal and he had to strategically bring in guys that were going to be impactful performers in the lineup. And then he had to go and replace the bullpen. Right, last year he spent a lot of time in the portal bringing guys in to replace starters, and which he did. He had 2 really good starters he got out of the portal. Now this year he had to go and spend some time replacing some of the guys out of the bullpen, and having guys that can maybe be some swing guys. And he did a really good job with that. Obviously, Anthony Ayenson comes in as a Saturday guy with a lot of experience. He's been really good so far. You bring in Cowan, who came in from Wofford. He's been really good out the pen, throwing multiple innings. And so I think the structure of his team and the structure of the way you recruited was really good, right? Because you had 3 freshmen in the lineup last year in Milam, Larson, and Jake Brown. All 3 of those guys are going to continue to improve and be stalwarts in the lineup. And then you go out and you bring a recruiting class in like you did last year. And now you got Aaron Beatty, who's a freshman. You have Curiel as a freshman. And so you have a nice core group of young guys that you can put in there. That's going to be the core group of guys for multiple years. And then on top of that, he goes and gets in Dickinson, who's a projected first rounder to come in there and be the second baseman and kind of take that offense to another level. And so what did I expect coming into the season, beginning of the season? I expected the pitching staff to be really good, which has been evident, right? I think you have 3 number 1 starters in your rotation for the most part. Definitely 2 number 1 starters and a guy who I think a lot of teams would like as a number 1 starter in Ayenson. You have a lot of young guys coming out of the bullpen that have electric arms. They did really good in the portal and bringing guys in. I think the opening weekend they had 10 or 11 guys throw fastballs 95 plus. So you have a lot of firepower in that. I thought the lineup was going to take a little time to develop. I thought it was going to take him, and pitching is always ahead of the offense in any year. But an offense that has a lot of turnover, that have a lot of guys, it was going to take a little time for them to develop. And I think you saw that over the last couple of weekends.
Mikey, you mentioned the pitching staff. I feel like we have to start there when you look at the numbers they put up. Obviously, the big number from opening weekend was 45 strikeouts in 3 games, and I think that was an LSU record maybe for a series.
Yeah.
But the trio, like you mentioned, Cade Anderson, Chase Shores, Anthony Ayenson, some of these guys coming out the pen. I mean, heck, even I mentioned the Monday game against Nichols, the freshman, I believe it was Schmidt that pitched Monday night. That dude has the makings of a number one guy. I think he turned down, like, what was it, first or second round money
Yeah.
to come to LSU. I mean, when you're reeling in those kind of guys, it's a pretty good sign. So, you know as well as I do, Mikey, the numbers can be a little bit skewed right now just because of the competition. When you get in SEC play, that's when we really find out who's who. But, I mean, from a stuff perspective, in your mind, this pitching staff ranks near the top of college baseball. Can it be a top of the SEC, number one in the conference kind of staff in your mind?
Right. And look, you're right. It's super early. The competition hasn't been to the level of competition that LSU is going to face in the SEC. I think between the pitching staff and the offensive line, in the lineup, I think the one thing that you can look at is, hey, are they getting a ton of swing and misses on balls being chased out of the zone, or are they filling up the zone, they're attacking the zone, and they're utilizing their stuff? And what we've seen with the pitching staff is they've utilized their stuff and they're attacking the zone. They're not walking a bunch of guys. They're not giving free passes, and they're doing the things that they need to do to get those guys out, which to me, that translates to no matter what the competition is, right? If you have good stuff and you throw strikes, no matter who you're playing, that's going to translate. Baseball's a hard sport. Hitting's hard. When you have guys throwing 96 to 100 miles an hour, but also being able to control the zone, I think to me that carries over no matter who you're playing. And so you mentioned the 45 strikeouts opening weekend. I believe they only walked 3 guys all weekend. And so no matter who you are, no matter who you're playing, that's very hard to do. And that tells me that they're throwing a lot of strikes and they're utilizing their abilities and their stuff to get outs, not just saying, oh, these teams aren't as good as us. We're just going to throw fastballs and get them chasing balls everywhere. So I think that's encouraging for the staff moving forward. I think you have 2 freshmen that are coming out of the bullpen that are as electric as anybody. You have Maverick Rizzi, who is 6'9", throws 100-mile-an-hour sinkers, which is pretty wild. Then you have Kason Evans, another freshman who's throwing 97, 98 miles an hour out of the bullpen. And Jay from opening weekend has thrown them in pretty early into the games. And so I think that, moving forward, those guys are only going to get better. And so, I think the pitching staff plays. I think all the stuff that we've seen translates. What I'm looking forward to is this week, because they go out and play DBU on Wednesday, and they go out in Texas and they play a step up in competition than they've played, right? So how do they respond whenever they inevitably do get people on base? How do they respond whenever they do have a couple balls that maybe got booted around or walked a couple guys and you have bases loaded, 1 out? Who's going to come up and make the big pitch? And so I think it's going to be a good test for them this weekend and see how they respond to some of that adversity.
And you mentioned, Mikey, LSU 7-1 right now, 8 total games, 93 strikeouts for that pitching staff. So the stuff is not in question. Mikey, if there's anybody that knows about playing as a freshman and having success as a freshman in the outfield, particularly, it's you. I want to talk about Derek Curiel. I mean, this is a kid that had all the hype, all the buzz. He was picked as preseason freshman of the year by multiple outlets out there. So people knew about him, leading the team in average through 8 games. He's hitting .414. And you know as well as anybody, again, we get to SEC play. There might be some bumps in the road where that step up in competition. But what have you seen from this kid? And Mikey, I've even heard people talk about he's got the DC initials, and the last guy that had those DC initials to play the outfield at LSU turned out to be pretty good, a guy named Dylan Cruz. But your thoughts on Derek Curiel? It's very early in his career, just 8 games, but, man, the hype and the buzz is there, and it's hard not to buy into that.
Yeah, he's a great player. Him and Dylan Cruz, obviously completely different skill sets. Dylan Cruz was going to be a guy that has a potential 2020 guy, right? Could steal bags, could hit a bunch of homers. He did that last time here. I think Curiel has shown that the moment doesn't get too big for him, right? Since the day one, he's been in the lineup, at the top of the lineup, hitting the tool, which I love that he's there. He's got protection in front of and behind him. It takes a little bit of the pressure off of him, and he's been able to control the strike zone. We've heard it all fall, and leading into the season, his bat-to-ball skills and how good he is as getting the barrel to the baseball. You've seen that early on. Hitting .414 first 2 weeks of the season, obviously as a freshman, very important to get off to a good start. Now, there's always these freshmen, there's peaks and valleys, especially as a freshman, when people start to kind of understand, some of your flaws and adjust to some of the things that you're doing. There's going to be a time where pitchers are coming at him and he's struggling a little bit. He's going to have to get out of it. Milam did it last year. If you look at what Milam did preseason SEC, he, was hitting over 400. Then he went to the SEC the first 3 or 4 weeks. They kind of figured him out. And then after that, he figured them out and got back on track, ended up hitting 320. Jacoby Jones, when I was at LSU, did the exact same thing. Was hitting 420 going into SEC. SEC figured him out. He kind of plummeted, and then all of a sudden he figured it out. He ended up hitting over 300 as a freshman. So there's inevitably going to be a time where he's going to have to say, okay, what are they doing? How are they attacking me? But the way his demeanor and his poise and what he's shown so far, I have no doubt in my mind that he's going to be able to adjust to that. And he's been right in the middle from day one. There's not many guys that you can come in as a freshman that have come through LSU and say, hey, you're penciled in as a day one starter. DJ LeMahieu, Alex Bregman, and Dylan Cruz are the top 3 that come to mind on the offense. Right? Say, hey, no matter what happens in the fall, you're going to be in the middle of the lineup come day one as a freshman. And Derek Curiel has been one of those guys. So I'm excited to see how he develops as the season goes on.
Mikey, what was the dip like for you, and how did you get out of it? Because obviously, again, you were a freshman star for the Tigers, but like you mentioned, everybody, it's inevitable. It's baseball. Even your veterans are going to go through that. I don't know how much you, if at all, talk to these guys, but like, what's your advice for a youngster like that when you inevitably run into that?
So for me, I didn't get into the lineup until probably the 3rd weekend of the SEC. And I was grinding through it. Like, luckily in 2009, when I was a freshman, we had a team that didn't have to rely on me day in and day out offensively to be able to drive guys in. I was hitting 7 or 8 hole, which is fine. And, for me, it was like, what do I need to do just to get do something positive that day, right? And, I started off well, and I went through it. And then you get to the back end of the season, and you get to postseason, stuff starts to ramp up. So whenever you start to struggle, for me, it was put something in the bucket every day, right? If you go 0 for 4, but you had a guy on third base with less than 2 and you had a ground out RBI, put something in the bucket. You make a diving play in the outfield, you put something in the bucket, right? And if you utilize that and you say, okay, those little things end up winning games over time. It's not necessarily, hey, did I go 4 for 4 or 0 for 4? It's, but what did you do to help the team win, right? One small little thing, and that kind of eases your mind a little bit, and it doesn't put the pressure on, I got to get hit here. I had to drive a guy in there. And so that would be my advice, is don't let the moment get too big for you. It's never as good as it seems, never as bad as it seems. In the moment, it feels like the sky's falling, but if you take a step back, it's like, it's really not too bad, So that would be my advice. And, luckily for him, he's got a lot of guys around him that have kind of gone through it. And so he can lean on them for some advice too.
Spoken from a guy who has done it a time or two. That is safe to say. Mikey, as we look at the rest of the offensive lineup, Bear Jones is the guy that's going to draw all the headlines, and certainly deservedly so. I mean, he's a guy that could hit 30-plus homers this year very easily. The thing that jumps out to me, though, we can go through some of them individually, but just depth, man. It just feels like LSU, they've got so many more than just the 9 that get in the lineup, so many options, guys in the first few weeks that have made their contributions. Your thoughts on the depth of the lineup and some of the top guys that you're depending on, and what excites you about the lineup thus far?
So sometimes depth is a good thing, and sometimes it can be a bad thing, right? If depth's a bad thing, if nobody's really taken hold of a position and you keep interchanging the lineup. It happened a little bit last year where you couldn't figure out the lineup that you really wanted to because you had so much ability and you knew that these guys could do it, but they haven't really shown to do it consistently. This year, I think it's a little different. You have the depth, but I think Jay has the guys, the core group of the 6, 7, 8 guys that he believes that are going to be in lineup every single day, right? The depth comes into play when, matchups, right? Lefty, righty matchups, beginning of the game, end of the game. And I think Jay's shown that it doesn't matter if it's the 4th, 5th, or 6th inning, you have to be ready to go to pinch hit or get put into those situations. And so the depth is a positive thing, I think, this year. I think you're seeing that Jay is comfortable with the lineup, especially the first 4 or 5 guys in the lineup. And then, he's done something very interesting this year, and he's put Milam at the bottom of the lineup, right? Which I think some people kind of raises some eyebrows. I kind of like it. It gives you some thump at the bottom of the lineup, and it gives you some experience at the bottom lineup, and it allows you to turn the lineup over a lot more consistently to the guys at the top lineup who are going to drive the guys in. So, Jay has the ability to get creative. with the lineup because he has so much ability, and so it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But what he's done so far, I don't see him straying too far away from it.
Mikey, it's so early in the season, just 8 games in, that we have to overanalyze it, right? Do the one thing you're not supposed to do, which is overreact and overanalyze. LSU loses a game over the weekend, and like you mentioned, you would have thought that the sky was falling. Thoughts on that ball game against Omaha? And was there anything like in that game that you're like, hey, if that rears its head again, there's reason for concern, or is it just a one-off thing? Again, I'm not a big overanalyzer here, but the people need answers, Mike. Yeah. How can it happen?
Listen, they don't handle those things very lightly over here. They don't take it. They over-exaggerate a little bit.
Social media was get your popcorn out. It was
worst team in the world. Worst team in the world. I can't believe it. Jay needs to get fired because they can't win the game. They hit too many fly balls, this and that. So listen, those games happen. I like to believe it's a one-off game. Like you said, it's early. Only time will tell if it's something that's going to consistently happen. I think it looks worse than it actually. They didn't play great. They didn't play well. They didn't swing it well. I think it looks worse because they were getting no hit going into the ninth. It wasn't necessarily the loss. It was how they were losing. And then, Larson gets the hit in the ninth inning and kind of gets the ball rolling, and they end up scoring 4 runs, and they put the winning run on base. And so they end up making it a game in the ninth, too little, too late. But they put themselves in a position to win. Man, when you get in a situation like that and you're better than the pitcher that they have, and it was a earlier game. It was a rainy, cold, windy day blowing in. And I'm not trying to make excuses. It's just sometimes baseball is going to baseball. And this happened, and the game you look up in the 5th inning and you're like, shit, we don't have a hit, and then you're like, okay, we got to ramp it up. And sometimes it's hard to flip the switch. And then it's just baseball. The baseball god said, no, you didn't treat this the way you needed to treat it. So we're going to punish you a little bit. And you're going to hit some balls hard in the teeth of the wind. You're going to get caught, and you're going to get stuck in a situation that hopefully they learn from. And I think knowing Jay, he's not going to let them forget that, And so, I think it's a one-off, but if it does continue to happen throughout the course of the year where they're starting to hit a bunch of lazy fly balls in the outfield, they're not really allowing they're not working counts, and they're not having good at bats, then that's something you need to worry about. But I don't see that happening. I think it was just one of those games, and you just move on from it.
No way, Mikey. They're terrible. You're wrong.
Yeah, it's not. They can't play defense. They can't hit. They can't do anything. It's unbelievable.
No, It's canceled the season. It's over.
Yeah.
Mikey, something that doesn't get talked about a lot. You took a lot of pride in it, though. Defense, really quickly. This team, when you look at them defensively, thoughts on how they are in the field?
I think they're a really good defensive team. I think Milam's shown early on the season he's more than capable at shortstop. I mean, he hasn't had a bad opportunity there. He hasn't looked bad. He's looked very comfortable. He does really good coming through the baseball and making strong throws over there. You have obviously Braswell at third, which I think he fits better at third base than he does at shortstop. But he loves Tanner Reeves, right? Jay loves Tanner Reeves, transfer from Glenn. He's gotten a couple. He started last night at third base, and so Jay's going to try to mix him in there. I think Dickinson at second base, obviously, he's got that solidified. Bear Jones, he doesn't get enough credit on how good he is defensively at first base because he comes after Trey Morgan, who may be the best defensive first baseman that come through college. But Bear Jones is great. He's not a liability. He's actually an asset over there at first. But I think what really separates this team from a couple of the teams that in the past the Jays had is I think this may be the most athletic outfielder that he's had, right? You bring in Stanfield from Auburn, who's a bona fide superstar in center field defensively specifically, right? He'll go run anything down. You have Jake Brown, who you can feel comfortable putting him in center field. And then you have Curiel, who's also a center fielder. So you have 3 center fielders playing in the outfield. You can put in Pearson, who made great play in Omaha to basically seal the game or keep the game to where it was. And Larson showed that he's very capable last year. So to me, the defensive prowess they have in the outfield and the athleticism they have in the outfield, I think is the best he's had. Obviously, catcher's going to be developing as the season goes. I think Aaron Beatty is going to be really good. I think Hernandez has been good. They haven't been a liability back there, and it's just one of those things that over time, I think that catching. But you need at least two catchers, and I think you got 2 pretty good ones. One's a freshman who's going to be there for a long time.
Mikey, zooming out from LSU, looking at the rest of the SEC, we know Texas A&M, number one in the country right now. They just suffered the big injury with Gavin Grahovic. We'll see how that impacts them. But Tennessee and Florida, red hot to start the year. We just saw what Oklahoma did, beating 2 top 10 teams. Alabama had a great weekend in Jacksonville. You know, the others you would expect. Arkansas is going to be right up there. Georgia, what they're doing with Wes Johnson, obviously, coming from LSU. They're red hot to start the year. The league seems as deep as ever, and it just seems like it's going to be as competitive as ever at the top. But I would also say from the LSU perspective, it feels like it's kind of wide open, especially now not knowing what A&M's going to be without Grahovic, such a big loss. Just thoughts on the conference as a whole, and I mean, really just how excited you are to see it play out. Because, again, there's going to be some epic weekends, some all-out wars involving LSU and everyone else for that matter.
Yeah, it's a unique time in college baseball. SEC, like you said, is as deep as it's ever been. It's as talented as it's ever been. Even if Grahovic doesn't get hurt, I think it's wide open just because of how talented these pitching staffs are. I mean, you got Randy Johnson reincarnated in college baseball, pitching in the SEC. You have 2 freshmen at LSU throwing 100. You have another freshman starter at LSU touching 98. You have Florida, who always has a good staff. Arkansas is known to always have one of the better staffs in college baseball. You have the returning guys at A&M. Like, I can go on and on about how talented this league is. And, you know, when I was coming out, people used to compare the SEC. Oh, it's like playing AA baseball. And I'm like, no, that's a little aggressive. I would say it's more like playing high A baseball when I was coming out, because you'd have 2 starters, and the third one was pretty good, but he wasn't probably elite. And you probably had 1 or 2 guys out the bullpen that you could count on consistently, maybe 3, right? Offenses were good. Now, this is definitely 100% AA baseball because of the arms you have, because of the types of arms you're facing out of the bullpen. The only difference that separates them from the guys in AA is experience, right? It's not talent. It's the experience, is being able to do it consistently day after day. So SEC, and there's a couple reasons for that, right? I think, you know, the way the draft being only 20 rounds, I think NIL has been a big reason for that. So now these guys that maybe were drafted in the 12th round and were given, you know, $100,000. Now they come back to school and they get $100,000 to come back to NIL, and they don't have to go out and they can play for another year. So I think all of that is good for college baseball, and it's good for the SEC specifically. And man, just sit back and enjoy the talent, because you don't get to see this very often in college baseball.
Mikey, we're going to get you on later this season because a trip to Alex Box is incoming. Yeah. My first ever one. I was there in the fall, saw a little fall ball. It's obviously different, a weekend in the spring or the summer, if you will, at the Box. I'm going to ask you this, and again, it will not be the first time I ask you. For somebody who's never been, can you describe to me what will be in store for a weekend, an SEC weekend at Alex Box Stadium?
Yeah, look, I'm hoping it's great weather, because if it's great weather and it's not rainy, you can expect a football atmosphere on the baseball side, which, you know, coming when you're playing and you're driving on a Friday to school or to the stadium, and you see people tailgating at 11 a.m. on a Friday in RVs, and you're like, damn, this is for a baseball game, not for a football game, for a baseball game. And so you're going to get the football atmosphere, especially when Tennessee comes to play, because obviously there's, you know, the last 4 years there's been this, you know, new rivalry between LSU and Florida. I mean, LSU and Tennessee. LSU and Florida obviously has one too, but LSU and Tennessee, and you know, Tennessee is the reigning champs. LSU is the champs before them, and so you're going to get a lot of the energy already built in. I think it's more about the fans than the players, right? You talk to the players; they have a mutual respect for each other. They don't hate each other. You know, they want to win just as bad against Tennessee as anyone else. But it's not about hate. It's just about great competition. It's more about the fans, which I'd rather be that way, because that brings the energy around the stadium. So that weekend's going to be a very much a football atmosphere. I'm looking forward. I'm excited for you. I'm actually jealous, because it'll be the first time you get to experience that, and I don't get that first in me anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I don't get to go in there and say, oh, this is what do I need to expect? And so hopefully when you come in there, we can have a little collab deal. We can do a show together, and you can come in our studio and we can chop it up.
Dude, we'll absolutely have to. The other side note, by the way, and people might gasp when they hear this. I've never had crawfish like that, so that'll be the other part of the experience. That
Perfect.
hopefully it's
We'll
peak
make it happen.
crawfish. Yeah, we'll
Look,
eat.
maybe I'll have a tailgate. Maybe we'll get a boil just for you.
Well, dude, we'll suck the head, we'll eat the poop line, we'll do all that stuff. And I have no idea. I need somebody to teach me what I'm doing. I have no idea.
Yeah,
Mikie
no
Mahtook
doubt.
again, LSU legend, the host, the founder, if you will, of Mik'd Up with Mikie Mahtook. Mikey, let folks know where they can check you out, when you guys go live, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so we go live Monday, Wednesdays from 6 to 8 p.m. and then Fridays from 1 to 2-ish. The beauty of being on the internet is you can get flexible with that based off game cancellations, different parts of the schedule. But we'll go live 3 days a week. YouTube is the best way to watch us. We're anywhere you can get your podcast, but we're more of a visual show. There's a lot of things that we'll do on the show that if you're listening to us, you can be like, what the hell are they talking about or what are they doing? We have a good time. It's me, Jared Mitchell, obviously, also All-American from LSU. Won a national championship in football and in baseball while he was at LSU, and then our producer Lloyd. So we just have a fun time. We love talking ball. We talk all sports, but specifically right now baseball. So join us, come and look at us, come and watch us, come and hang out with us, come and talk shit to us. We love it all. Come hang out. So we appreciate that.
Mikey, appreciate you, my friend, and definitely excited to link up with you down the road this baseball season.
Yeah, man, appreciate it. Enjoy being on your show, bro. You do a great job.
All right, brother, we'll cut it there. I appreciate the kind words, by the way, Mike. It was awesome.
Yep.
Dude, I will. I'll keep you updated